The motorcycle queen of Miami, Bessie Stringfield, was one of, if not the first African-American woman who owned a motorcycle in the United States. Yet, it was her several solo trips across the country, harrowing in and of itself in today's world, let alone during Jim Crow, that sealed her place in history. Both women and African-American motorcyclists credit her feat with breaking down barriers. Much of Stringfield's notoriety comes from her origin story, which seemed to be shrouded in myths and mystique. Several sources giving differing details about her birth date, given name, and parents. However, the nearly indisputable truth is that Bessie Patrice White was born in Edenton, North Carolina, to Maggie Cherry and James White. Several sources and official documents confirm this version of events, with the only discrepancy being that her birth year was either 1911 or 1912, according to Social Security Index. However, her more popular story, and the one used for this video, was that she was born Betsy Lenora Ellis in Kingston, Jamaica, in February of 1911, to a black Jamaican father and a white Dutch mother, James Ferguson and Maria Ellis, a well-off businessman and his domestic worker employee, with Stringfield and her parents eventually moving to Boston, Massachusetts when she was 5, and either both of her parents dying from smallpox or just her mother, and her father, unable to deal with raising a child, abandoning her. Next, she would spend a few years at a Catholic orphanage. Being adopted under ideal circumstances was still a slim chance. So, suffice it to say that there weren't many people willing to adopt black children. However, a godsend came in the form of a wealthy Irish Catholic woman whose name is lost to time. When the owner of the orphanage handed Stringfield off to her adopted mother, she used a racial slur to describe the little girl. But the new mom didn't show any prejudice against her daughter's ethnicity. In her new house, Stringfield had her own room and all the things a child needed or wanted. When she became a teenager, Stringfield tried riding the motorcycle of an upstairs neighbor. This is where she caught the bug. Now, wanting one of her own, her mother reminded her that nice girls don't go around riding on motorcycles. Stringfield was persistent and asked for a motorcycle for her 16th birthday. Her mom couldn't refuse her and gave her a 1928 Indian Scout. Without any prior knowledge of operating the controls, she started the motorcycle and easily mastered it. And from there, she would taste the ultimate freedom such a machine gives. Right after high school, Stringfield took off on her bike to explore all around New England, coming back to Boston only for short visits. It didn't take long for her to want more adventure. She started what she called her penny tours. She spread out a map and tossed a penny onto it. Wherever it landed would be her next destination. In 1930, at age 19, she took 6 months to ride solo across the country. Later that year, she exchanged her Indian for a Harley Davidson, the first of 27 she would own. The only things she carried on her was her leather jacket, a money belt, and extra clothes that fit in the saddlebags. Between the 1930s and the early 1940s, she made the historic trek across the United States 8 times, eventually riding through all the lower 48 states with trips to Europe, Brazil, and Haiti, during which she earned money from performing motorcycle stunts and carnival shows. Stringfield understood how unusual it was for a single African-American woman to travel alone on a motorcycle. All along the way, Wherever I rode, the people were overwhelmed to see a Negro woman riding on a motorcycle. She said she was never afraid on the road because the man upstairs was always with her. Due to her skin color, Stringfield was often denied accommodations while traveling and was forced to sleep on her motorcycle at gasoline stations. She also referred to the sacred Negro Motorist Green Book to find safe places to eat and stay while in the Jim Crow South. During World War II, Stringfield served her country by working for the U.S. Army as a civilian motorcycle dispatch rider, carrying documents between domestic bases. The only woman in her unit, she completed rigorous training maneuvers, including learning how to weave a makeshift bridge to cross swamps from rope and tree limbs. However, the greatest hazard she routinely encountered on the road seemed to be racial prejudice. She was followed by a man in a pickup truck who deliberately ran her into a ditch, violently knocking her off her bike. In between her travels, Stringfield wed and divorced 6 times. Her first marriage was the most traumatic, as she had lost 3 babies. She wouldn't go on to conceive any more children. She had decided to keep the surname of her 3rd husband, Arthur Stringfield, as, according to her, he asked me to keep his name because I had made it famous. In the early 1950s, Stringfield completed her motorcycle odysseys across the United States. She bought a house in a Miami, Florida suburb and became a licensed practical nurse. She continued to ride locally, however, and founded the Iron Horse Motorcycle Club. Disguised as a man, Stringfield won a local motorcycle race, but was denied the prize money when she took off her helmet. Her other antics, including riding her Harley while standing in its saddle, attracted local press attention. Reporters called Stringfield the Negro Motorcycle Queen at first, and then, later, the Motorcycle Queen of Miami. In 1990, when the American Motorcycle Association opened up the first Motorcycle Heritage Museum in Pinkerton, Ohio, Stringfield was featured in its inaugural exhibit on women in motorcycling. Later in life, Stringfield suffered the symptoms caused by an enlarged heart. She died in Opelika, Florida in 1993 at the age of 82. A decade later, the AMA instituted the Bessie Stringfield Award to honor women who are leaders in motorcycling. In 2002, she was inducted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. It does not come under scrutiny that Stringfield is a celebrated and beloved historical figure, regardless of what can be considered revisionist history regarding her origin story. Whether or not this was deliberate, she inspired little black girls in the U.S. to step out and become one with their own tales of glory, fame, and mystique.